The woman at the corner table had been waiting for 47 minutes when she finally looked toward the restaurant door and whispered, almost to herself, "Maybe he's not coming." Her voice was so quiet that nobody should have heard it, but Caleb Mercer did. He had just stepped inside a small family-owned restaurant in Portland, Oregon, hoping to escape the rain after a long day at work. He was already turning toward an empty table when the woman suddenly stood, smiled with visible relief, and walked straight toward him. "You're Caleb, right?" she asked. Caleb froze. He wasn't Caleb in the way she meant. Yet before he could explain, he noticed the untouched plate waiting behind her, the trembling fingers she quickly hid beneath the table, and the small envelope beside her purse marked with a handwritten word, "Hope." If you believe that kindness can arrive at exactly the moment someone needs it, take a second to like this story. Share it with someone who needs a little hope. Leave a comment about where you believe second chances begin, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about compassion, forgiveness, and the quiet goodness people show when nobody is watching. Caleb was actually waiting for a coworker who had texted him that she would be late, but the woman standing in front of him clearly believed he was someone else. Her name was Grace Whitmore, and she had spent the entire afternoon convincing herself that going on a blind date was a brave thing to do. After losing her husband several years earlier, she had slowly built a life around work, church, and caring for her aging mother in a nearby town. Her sister, convinced Grace had forgotten how to live for herself, had secretly arranged the date. Grace had arrived early, wearing a simple green blouse and carrying the nervous hope of someone who had almost forgotten what it felt like to be excited about meeting somebody new. When Caleb looked at the name on the reservation card, he realized the mistake immediately. The man Grace was expecting was named Nathan, not Caleb. He could have corrected her, apologized, and walked away. It would have been the easiest thing to do, but then he saw her glance toward the door again, and something about that lonely expression stopped him. Caleb gently explained that there had been a misunderstanding, and Grace's face changed instantly. She apologized several times, embarrassed that she had mistaken a stranger for her date. She started gathering her purse, clearly preparing to leave. But Caleb noticed the untouched meal. He asked if she had eaten anything that day. Grace smiled weakly and admitted that she had skipped lunch because she was too nervous. Caleb pulled out the chair across from her and told her that since he was already there, perhaps neither of them had to eat alone. Grace hesitated, then sat down. What began as an awkward mistake slowly became an unexpectedly honest dinner. They talked about ordinary things at first: bad weather, favorite restaurants, the strange habits of people in Portland, and how difficult it was to meet new people as adults. But eventually Grace told him about her husband, Michael, and how after his death she had become afraid of making new memories because they felt like betrayals of the old ones. Caleb listened without trying to fix her grief. He understood something about empty chairs himself. His father had died years earlier, and Caleb had spent much of his adult life regretting that their final conversation had ended with an argument over something neither of them could even remember clearly anymore. Then, Grace received a message from her mother. The older woman had fallen at home and needed someone to pick her up from a nearby clinic. Grace immediately stood, panic replacing every other emotion. Caleb offered to drive her. She refused at first, uncomfortable accepting help from a stranger. But the rain was getting heavier and her hands were shaking. Caleb simply told her that sometimes accepting kindness was also a way of giving someone else the chance to do something good. At the clinic, Caleb waited while Grace helped her mother into the car. Her mother, Ruth, looked at him curiously and asked who he was. Grace gave a small laugh and explained the entire strange story. Ruth smiled and said that perhaps God had a sense of humor. Caleb smiled too, but Grace noticed something different in his expression. He looked relieved, almost as though he had needed this evening as much as she had. Weeks passed. Grace and Caleb became friends. They did not rush into romance, and that made their connection feel more genuine. Caleb helped Grace repaint her mother's porch. Grace invited Caleb to church one Sunday when he admitted he had been searching for something to believe in after years of feeling disconnected from faith. Slowly, they began healing places in each other that neither had known how to name. Months later, Grace returned to the same restaurant with Caleb. This time, She was not waiting anxiously for someone who might never arrive. She was sitting across from the man who had stayed when he could have walked away. On the table between them was another envelope. Inside was a photograph from their first accidental dinner, taken by the restaurant owner with their permission. On the back, Grace had written, "Sometimes the wrong person walks through the door because the right moment has finally arrived." Before the story ends, leave a comment and tell me what you would have done if you were Caleb. Would you have corrected Grace immediately and left? Or would you have stayed for one meal, simply so she would not have to eat alone? And if this story touched something inside your heart, please support it with a like, share it with someone who believes kindness still matters, and subscribe for more stories about hope, faith, forgiveness, and unexpected second chances. Because sometimes life does not give us the person we were expecting. Sometimes it gives us someone who reminds us that we were never meant to walk through every difficult season alone.